Picture this, a legendary hero expedition. 500 warriors, weapons gleaming, confidence sky high, gets absolutely vaporized the second they touch a dungeon door. Not slowly picked apart, not dramatically defeated after a long fight. Instantly turned to ash by hidden artillery that nobody saw coming. Picture a continent's most celebrated star warrior, a man who's killed 1,000 monsters and walked away rich every time, waking up chained in a damp cell with his reputation completely shredded and a debt so massive he'll never pay it off in 3 lifetimes. Picture a demon king diving completely naked into a pool of boiling magma, letting it eat at his skin, and walking out the other side with a mythical phoenix burning inside his chest. Hair turned red, fire in his lungs, wings cracking out of his back against his own will. Picture a novice princess unleashing her absolute best anti-demon technique. Years of training, every last drop of life energy, one perfect crescent moon strike, and watching a man catch it with one bare hand and squeeze it into dust without blinking. And at the center of all of it, a demon who graduated dead last, who built the smallest tower anyone had ever seen, who everyone assumed was finished. They had no idea they were walking into the most calculated trap on the continent. Rewind, way back, to the day it all started, or more accurately, the day it started over. Burj Adeas stands at the front of the graduation hall, the elite demonic military academy behind him, his entire future supposedly laid out in front of him. Today's the day every graduate reads the sacred commandments, the holy rules of how a demon king must operate. The legendary standards that have governed demons for generations. Burj looks at the scroll. He knows exactly what's written on it. He read it once, 15 years from now, right before human heroes laughed at his severed head. He sets it down without opening it. The hall goes completely silent. Every professor, every general, every ceremonial official in that room stops breathing for a second. Then Burj opens his mouth and tells the entire demonic academy exactly what he thinks of their sacred commandments. Loudly, clearly, without a single apology. The rules, he says, are garbage. Engineered garbage. A trap dressed up as tradition. The room explodes. Here's the thing that Burj has spent 15 years of a dead life figuring out. The traditional Demon King playbook. Build a massive, visible tower. Put weak monsters on the lower floors so heroes can level up safely. Kidnap highly visible royals. Leave clues for hunting parties. Is not a strategy. It's a feeding schedule. The human hero system runs on demonic experience points. Every demon king following orthodox rules is just a farming spot waiting to be cleared. Burj watched his first life play out exactly that way. He followed every rule, graduated top of his class, built the perfect tower by the book, and got systematically stripped apart by hero parties who treated his legendary dragon bloodline as cheap loot. The exact moment the blade came down, he could hear them laughing about the experience points. So yeah. He's got some notes on the sacred commandments. The Academy doesn't take kindly to this review. The judgment is swift. No royal demon privileges. No default resources. No support network. Exiled to Arian, a frozen northern mountain range where hero hunting parties roam constantly, so aggressive and so experienced that most demons sent there don't last a season. The sentence is meant to be a death warrant with extra steps. Burj smiles and starts packing. There's one rule the Academy can't override. The top Academy graduate gets assigned to serve the top-ranked Demon King. And since Burj is technically enrolled as top-ranked despite graduating last, Gordon Jury has to follow him north. Gordon Jury is the actual top student. Academic record, practical scores, every measurable metric. The kind of graduate who memorized the sacred commandments before he could walk. He shows up at the exile transport with a perfectly pressed uniform, a copy of every orthodox regulation ever written, and a quiet internal crisis that he's managing barely. He looks at Burj. He looks at the frozen wasteland they're heading toward. He asks, very politely, if Burj understands the gravity of this situation. Burj tells him they're going to build something. Gordon asks what kind of tower. Burj says 5 floors. Gordon sits down. Traditional towers are 99 floors minimum. 5 floors isn't a tower, it's a shed. It's practically an insult to the concept of a Demon King fortress. Gordon runs the numbers in his head and comes up with approximately 0 strategic scenarios where this works. He has 3 separate regulation manuals that say 5 floors is catastrophic. Burj doesn't read regulation manuals. They arrive in Arian. The cold is immediate and mean, the kind of frost that gets into joints and doesn't leave. Hero expedition camps dot the mountain ranges, well supplied and well staffed because Arian is essentially an open hunting ground. Any demon territory here is a guaranteed fame opportunity. Burj picks a location deep in a narrow mountain valley, not on any trade road, not visible from any standard expedition route. The valley walls are steep enough that anyone approaching has to funnel down a single path, and the natural snowfall buries most landmarks. He spends his limited starting demon energy and summons the tower. 5 floors, completely hidden by geography, and the first 3 floors, empty. Not a single monster, not a trap, not a chest of gold or a puzzling corridor, just stone walls and cold air. Gordon stares at the empty interior with the expression of a man watching a house fire from inside the house. Burj tells him the empty floors are intentional. See? Gordon is thinking like a traditional Demon King manager. Traditional managers want heroes to enter, fight, struggle, eventually fail, and spread the reputation of the tower's power. Orthodox strategy. Make the tower worth attacking, so heroes keep coming, keep farming you, keep giving your enemies a reason to send better warriors to clear you out completely. Burj is thinking differently. Empty floors mean nothing to farm. No experience points, no gold drops. No loot tables. A hero party that enters, finds nothing for 3 floors, and comes back out has wasted an entire expedition and has nothing to show for it. Word spreads fast in the adventuring community. Waste of time, they'll say. Don't bother. The goal isn't to beat every hero who enters. The goal is to make the tower not worth entering at all. Gordon processes this for a long moment. Then he picks up his management ledger and starts writing in it. Because if they're going to do something utterly insane, he's going to track every decision with perfect documentation. The tower needs more than empty floors, though. A 5-story hidden fortress in a freezing mountain valley is a good start on surviving, but Burj is playing a much longer game. He needs assets. Specifically, the kind of assets the orthodox system would never think to collect. He needs a princess, not a famous one. Not the kind that launches hero rescue missions and puts the Demon King's face on wanted posters across 3 empires. He needs the boring kind, a low-ranked royal nobody's going to miss. Somebody with just enough noble blood to generate a trickle of demon energy from the surrounding kingdom's political resentment. His target, the 13th princess of the Hilderan royal line, obscure, unremarkable. Reports say she has virtually no magical talent. Nobody's writing songs about the 13th princess. Burj tracks down her last known location and goes to collect her. This is where the plan encounters its first complication. The girl he finds is not the 13th princess, she's the first. Princess Erna Hilderan, hiding in her younger sister's quarters for reasons that become clear the moment she opens her hand, and a light spirit the size of a small sun materializes above her palm. Erna is an elemental prodigy. Mana practically leaks out of her. Her attunement to spirits is the kind that academies spend decades trying to produce artificially. She's been hiding it because powerful magic in a royal daughter creates political complications. She looks at Burj. She looks at the situation. She points out, very calmly, that she's aware she's being abducted. Burj looks at the light spirit still floating above her hand, a high-level entity by any measure, recalculates his entire roster of future plans, and says yes, she is being abducted. She goes with him. Partly because she doesn't really have a choice, and partly because the moment she sees the mountain valley and the hidden tower, something in her elemental instincts fires up like a signal flare. The mana concentration in those untouched peaks is extraordinary. For a spirit mage, it's practically paradise. By the time Burj gives her the 4th floor of the tower to use as she likes, Erna has started planning a spirit garden. Gordon adds her to the ledger. He notes, with careful professional neutrality, that the abducted princess appears to be very enthusiastic about her quarters. Burj needs resources before anything else. Demon energy is the currency that runs everything. Summons, upgrades, the system functions that give a Demon King structural advantages. And demon energy comes primarily from 2 sources: accumulated hatred from human kingdoms and the capture of high-ranking prisoners. He has a small trickle from Erna's political value. He needs more. He converts some early accumulation into human gold. The system allows exchange, and heads to the nearest operating slave market. This isn't sentiment, it's math. The right asset in the right place generates returns that outstrip their cost exponentially. The market is the kind of place that operates in the gray spaces of human law. Noisy, packed, morally straightforward in the worst possible direction. Burj walks through it, and stops at a particular transaction. The slave being auctioned is an elf, noble bearing, even chained. The maple tribe insignia is visible despite attempts to remove it. His name is Grenada, and the information Burj has from his previous life is that this specific elf has infiltration skills that put most intelligence networks to shame. He can move through human society without raising a single flag. Accent, mannerism, guild documentation, all of it perfect. The catch: Grenada swore a sacred oath to protect the world tree when he took his tribe's insignia. Any master who threatens tree spirits or elven sanctuaries triggers the oath, and Grenada will resist, regardless of personal cost. Burj outbids the competition, pays the going rate, and the moment the transaction closes and they're somewhere private, he swears an oath of his own. The world tree and its connected spirit network will be left untouched, not as a tactic, as a genuine binding contract, demon law enforceable. Grenada goes still for a moment, then he swears a 100-year contract. Burj sends him directly into a human merchant guild as a deep cover operative. Within weeks, Grenada is embedded so thoroughly that he's attending guild dinners and trading financial information that would take a standard intelligence network months to gather. The ledger grows. Gordon is starting to look slightly less horrified. The demon energy economy has a second growth track that Burj exploits immediately: spiritual blooming. Untouched natural mana concentrations in isolated mountain regions crystallize over centuries into refined mana flowers. Consuming them builds strength without spending demon points directly. Less potent than direct system upgrades for demons, but free. And the mountains of Arian are full of locations that no demon has ever bothered to look at, because orthodox doctrine never mentioned them. Erna can detect them. Her spirit attunement reads mana concentrations the way a compass reads north. Instinctive, precise, and useful at range. She describes the nearest bloom cluster, and Burj flies out to collect. The problem is the ice orcs. The Blue Ice Tribe has occupied the mana-rich regions of the Aryan snowfields for generations. Not because they understand spirit blooms, they don't, but because those are the richest hunting grounds and the territory suits their biology. They're not sophisticated fighters, but there are a lot of them, they're territorial, and a 500-man orc tribe on their home ground is a meaningful obstacle. Burj vaporizes the hostile ones and takes the flowers. Fast, efficient, no wasted motion. Then he finds Chief Krutu. Krutu is trying to decide whether to continue the fight or acknowledge that the outcome of that fight has become very clear. Burj offers him a third option: a demonic mark, ancient sigil branded into the orc's chest, binding his tribe to Burj's territory while granting them a direct infusion of demonic power. The transformation is immediate and dramatic. Krutu's muscle mass doubles. His tribe watches their chief go from large to genuinely terrifying in the span of a breath. The Blue Ice Orcs, historically treated as low-level grinding material by every hero expedition that came through Arian, are now built like small mountains and personally loyal to the Demon King of the Hidden Tower. Gordon updates the ledger. Under military assets, he writes something for the first time. The orcs are an asset, but Burj needs something even the orc army can't provide. He needs firepower that doesn't sleep, doesn't panic, and doesn't need to be fed. He needs a blacksmith, not just any blacksmith. The Human Guild rankings have one name at the absolute top of the crafting bracket: Loger Friedrich, a dwarf hero whose category isn't sword or shield but pure fabrication. The man doesn't fight armies. He builds the things that fight armies for you. Automated artillery, self-loading mechanisms, trap architecture that triggers on proximity and doesn't miss. In Burj's previous life, towers with Loger-class weaponry were the ones that actually made heroes sweat. The problem was always that Loger worked exclusively for human guilds, on commission, for absurd fees that only major kingdoms could afford. Burj isn't planning to pay the fee. He locates Loger in the subterranean city of Wolfner, a dwarf settlement built into the bedrock of a mountain range south of Arian, connected by hundreds of kilometers of carved tunnel. The city is a masterwork of engineering. Layered districts, mechanical lifts, forges burning at every level. The whole place smells like hot metal and ambition. Loger's workshop is at the deepest level, which makes sense. The deeper the forge, the hotter the geothermal feed, and a dwarf obsessive enough to build what Loger builds needs every degree of heat he can get. Burj drops in through a ventilation shaft. Loger is mid-project when Burj lands in his workshop, a compact, broad-shouldered dwarf with burn scars along both forearms and the kind of focus in his eyes that says the outside world is mostly an inconvenience. He spins around, grabs a forge hammer, and Burj hits him with a fast, targeted incapacitation before he can yell for the city guard. Getting Logar out of Wolfner requires moving through 9 security checkpoints and past a rotating patrol of dwarf soldiers who are very good at their jobs. Burj takes him out through a maintenance tunnel network that Grenada's intelligence had flagged as sporadically monitored. They make it out clean. Logar wakes up in the first floor of the hidden tower, finds himself staring at 5 stone walls and complete emptiness, and spends approximately 3 seconds feeling outrage before his craftsman's brain takes over. His eyes start measuring dimensions. His fingers twitch. The first floor is one large rectangular space with high ceilings, good structural integrity, and an enormous amount of potential. He tells Burj that if he's going to be held here, he's going to need specific materials. Burj gets him the materials. What Logar builds over the following weeks is extraordinary, and he builds it angry, which apparently makes dwarven craftsmen work faster. The first floor of the tower becomes what Logar privately calls the Hell Forge. Automated magic bomb cannons bolted into reinforced recesses along every wall. Trigger mechanisms calibrated to proximity and weight. Ammunition storage integrated into the floor itself so reload cycles are continuous. The whole system is concealed behind architectural features that look like plain stone from the entrance. Anyone walking through the front door without warning sees an empty room. What they don't see are 47 loaded cannons pointed at them from multiple angles. Gordon adds Logar to the ledger as an involuntary but productive asset. He notes with careful documentation that Logar has stopped mentioning escape approximately 2 weeks into the construction project. Logar has in fact stopped thinking about escape. He is thinking about calibration coefficients and blast radii, and whether the eastern wall can support 2 additional mounting brackets. A craftsman given unlimited materials, adequate space, and the freedom to build whatever engineering nightmare he can imagine, turns out to be pretty adaptable. The tower has firepower now. It doesn't have invisibility. Orthodox towers announce themselves. That's the point. You want heroes to know you exist so they come to you. So you generate the political gravity that accumulates demon energy over time. A visible tower is a functioning tower. A visible tower in Aryan is also a permanent target. Every hero expedition in the mountains has a map. Burj's 5-story structure is a curiosity right now. Too small to be taken seriously, too hidden to be easily found. But as the orcs gain territory, and the tower's regional influence grows, that will change. He needs the tower gone from every map and every magical detection grid simultaneously. The item he's looking for is a mana ghost, a cloaking device of dwarf engineering manufacture, originally designed for military siege operations. When synchronized with a structure, it wraps the entire building in a null field that bends both physical sight and magical scan around it. The building simply isn't there, according to every sense available. Only one functioning prototype exists. It's in Wolfner. Specifically, it's in a secured vault below Princess Louise's personal residence. Louise Worth is the dwarf princess, and she is not a political figure in any soft sense of the word. She's built like a siege engine herself, physically massive even by dwarf standards, with upper body strength that puts most heavy warriors to shame. She's also furious. Word has reached her that Logar Friedrich, her kingdom's most valuable crafting genius, was lifted out of a secured underground city through maintenance tunnels. She doesn't know who took him yet, but she's looking, and she's the kind of person who looks hard. Burj walks into the vault anyway. He finds the mana ghost in its housing, a compact mechanism that looks underwhelmingly small for what it does, and is in the process of detaching it when Louise arrives. The fight that follows is not pretty on Burj's side. Louise doesn't use weapons. She doesn't need to. Those arms generate force that has nothing to do with technique and everything to do with raw physical output, and the first time she connects, Burj hits a tunnel wall hard enough to feel it through his scales. He gives her credit. In a previous life, he'd never fought a dwarf princess, and this is a useful data point. He survives by being faster and by having dragon scales that absorb impact better than most armor, and by accepting that winning this fight cleanly isn't the goal. The goal is leaving with the device. He grabs the mana ghost, blows every charge he has in a tunnel collapse sequence that detonates the maintenance network under Louise's feet, and exits through the resulting rubble and chaos while she's still pulling herself out of the debris. She's already screaming his name. She recognized the black scales before he's fully clear. The sound of it echoes off the mountain rock. Louise Worth now has a personal mission. She's going to hunt Burj Adeas across every territory on the continent until she gets Logar back, gets her device back, and has the satisfaction of delivering physical consequences directly to the demon responsible. Burj notes this development in his mental ledger under complications that can be weaponized later. Back at the tower, sinking the mana ghost to the structure costs nearly everything. Burj dumps almost his entire demon energy reserve into the activation sequence. The device needs to be calibrated to the specific magical signature of the tower, or the null field collapses. It's a brutal expenditure. Gordon watches the resource counter drain and develops a new tick in his left eye. But when it activates, the tower disappears. Not metaphorically. Gordon walks 30 meters away, turns around, and there is nothing there. Snow, rock, valley walls. The tower he lives in simply does not register on any level of perception available to him. He walks back through the door, which he can feel but not see, and sits down at his desk and does not speak for several minutes. Burj, still running on empty demon points, and the particular satisfaction of a plan component clicking into place, collapses into his throne for approximately 4 hours. This is the thing nobody in his orbit gets to see, the face behind the calculation. Every ally, every enemy, every prisoner in that tower sees a demon king who projects absolute controlled confidence. Cold, precise, one step ahead at all times. When the room is empty, he's just a mortal body running on borrowed energy and 15 years of desperate planning. The exhaustion is real, and it hits hard in private. He gets up. There's too much left to do. The demonic court has been watching. Not with any particular intelligence. Orthodox demon kings don't build 5-story towers in frozen mountains, and the behavior has registered as eccentric rather than threatening. But the demonic court operates through layers of political enforcement, and the figure most immediately concerned with Burj's territory is Draxton. Draxton has been running the Beast Tower for 70 years, proud of that number. He's the kind of established power that becomes conservative through longevity. Everything that worked 70 years ago is sacred principle, and anything that departs from it is personal offense. He operates as an unofficial enforcer for orthodox doctrine, applying the court's pressure to irregular demon kings through social and political leverage. He sends for Burj. Burj goes, because the information he can extract from this meeting is worth the trip. He arrives at the Beast Tower, a properly proportioned, highly visible, traditionally structured tower that absolutely screams, Orthodox Demon King resides here, and is escorted to an audience chamber that is aggressively decorated to communicate Draxton's 70 years of dominance. Draxton starts making statements about the importance of following established protocols. Burj listens. Then he shatters the decorative floor tile under his feet with a casual application of pressure, leaving a visible crack running across the audience chamber from his position to Draxton's throne. It's not a combat move, it's punctuation. It says, I am here voluntarily, I can leave voluntarily, and your authority over me is precisely what I allow it to be. Draxton moves from statements to direct pressure. The demonic court has noted the irregularities. Burj's exile territory will be reviewed. The tiny tower is a disgrace to demonic standards, and there will be consequences. Burj learns what he came to learn. The court is watching but not acting yet. Draxton doesn't have independent authority to move against him, and there's a significant piece of political intelligence about an ongoing conflict between the Beast Kingdom and several human empires that Draxton let slip because he was too busy performing superiority to notice what he was revealing. Burj thanks him for his time and leaves. On the way back, he starts planning how to make that conflict significantly worse for everyone involved in a way that keeps all the heat off his mountain valley. The demonic court runs an annual summit. Hidden location, attendance expected from every operating demon king, structured like a business meeting, but functioning more like a pressure display where everyone demonstrates enough strength that nobody makes a move on anyone else's territory. The most significant figure at these summits is Jason. Jason is the demon king of lies, and the title is not metaphorical. He sits at the top of the demonic hierarchy, not through raw power, but through information. He knows things about everyone, trades that knowledge for gold and favors, and uses accumulated leverage to maintain a position that would otherwise require constant military defense. He's brilliant and deeply suspicious of anything that doesn't fit established patterns. Burj, arriving at the summit in a clean suit with exactly the energy of someone who has nothing interesting to hide, is a pattern that doesn't fit. Jason notices. The summit proceeds through its standard formalities: territorial disputes, resource allocation, the usual political theater. Then Jason raises the matter of Hill and Kargil. Hill and Kargil is one of the continent's 10 stars, the absolute peak of human hero achievement. 10 stars are the names that demon kings worry about. They're the hunters that don't get stopped by standard defenses. The fact that Hillen's last known expedition was headed toward the Aryan region and that Hillen has not been heard from since is a detail that the summit finds interesting. Jason asks Burj directly if he knows anything about it. Burj, with the relaxed calm of someone who has Hill and Kargil chained in a dungeon right now, tells Jason he's never met the man. Jason watches him carefully for the entire rest of the meeting. Burj deflects every probe, answers every question with something that is technically accurate, and volunteers nothing. When the summit ends, he's clean. What the summit doesn't know is that Hillen's expedition was dismantled in layers before a single hero ever touched the tower door. Here's what happened. Hill and Kargil arrived at Mount Urgash with 511 warriors. A proper coalition, multiple guilds, experienced veterans, well supplied. The kind of expedition that clears even well-defended territories. His intelligence said there was a small, under-resourced Demon King tower in this mountain range. Easy target. Good experience payout. Burj saw them coming 12 days before they arrived, through Grenada's network. He didn't prepare a defensive formation, he prepared a mountain. The first stage was avalanches, coordinated, triggered at specific geological points that Burj had mapped during his months in the valley. Snow on that scale doesn't need to kill, it just needs to separate, exhaust, and disorient. Hillen's expedition spent 3 nights fighting the mountain itself, losing men to cold and burial and the chaos of moving through terrain that kept rearranging itself. The second stage was the orcs. Krutu's transformed tribe hit the exposed expedition camps after dark, picking off isolated units, retreating before any organized response, hitting a different flank before the mercenaries had time to regroup. They were no longer the low-level grinding material that hero parties expected. The sight of orcs built like freight wagons moving faster than they should through blizzard conditions broke more than a few expedition members before the fighting started. By the time what remained of the expedition, 52 survivors out of 511, located the tower door, they were exhausted, depleted, angry, and running on adrenaline and the sunk-cost desperation of people who had lost too many friends to walk away empty-handed. They opened the door. Loger's Hellforge did what it was designed to do. 47 automated magic bomb cannons firing simultaneously into a room of 52 people is not a fight. It's a physics problem with a very short solution. The noise was audible from the valley walls. The aftermath was something Gordon quietly refused to put specific details about in the ledger. 7 survivors scrambled through, because sheer chaotic movement through the cannon arcs left gaps. They got past the first floor. They found the empty floors above it. They went to the 4th floor, where the spirit garden Erna had cultivated filled the air with soft mana light and something almost peaceful. Among those 7 was Hill and Kargil himself, battered and furious and trying to recalculate everything he thought he knew about this territory. And then the situation got worse, because Hillen panicked. Grenada is on the 4th floor when Hillen finds him. This is not a coincidence. Grenada had been embedded in Hillen's expedition as a support operative. His cover identity solid, his guild documentation perfect, his months of intelligence work completely invisible to the hero who'd hired him as a logistics contractor. He fought alongside Hillen's group through the avalanches and the orc raids. He pulled survivors out of snowdrifts. He shared rations and kept watch through the coldest nights. Hillen looks at him now and sees a resource. Not a person, not a comrade, a battery. This is the thing about celebrated heroes that the songs never cover, what they do when the calculation turns desperate. Hill and Kargil has a life force absorption technique, a method of pulling vitality from another living body to replenish his own combat reserves. It's not a widely advertised skill. It's the kind of ability you keep quiet about, because the context in which it becomes useful is not a context you want scrutinized. He grabs Grenada. The drain begins. Grenada feels it immediately, that specific wrongness of something fundamental being pulled out of him against his body's will. Life energy doesn't leave quietly. It leaves like something tearing. He tries to resist and finds he can't. Hillen is a 10-star. The gap in raw power is absolute. He starts to fade, not quickly, the way a wound fades. Slowly, the way a fire goes out when the wood runs out. a gradual dimming of everything that makes a person present in the world. Here is the thing about Grenada that Hillen never bothered to learn. He is a proud elf from the Maple tribe. He survived slavery. He survived a brutal auction. He swore a 100-year contract to a demon king and meant every word of it. He has watched his tribal insignia get scraped at and his dignity get tested at every point in the last several years. And now the man he fought beside for 3 months is killing him to buy himself another 20 minutes of combat viability. He weeps. Not from pain, from the specific grief of having believed for a moment that the hero standing next to him was something other than what every hero he'd ever encountered had turned out to be. Another human who looks at an elf and sees a number. The soul begins to slip. Then the temperature in the room drops by 10 degrees, and something vast and ancient and black fills the doorway. Burj doesn't announce himself dramatically. He doesn't need to. The moment his full presence arrives in the 4th floor, the mana in the air responds. Erna's carefully cultivated spirit garden goes dead still. Every elemental entity in the room, orienting toward the source of power that just walked through the door. Hillen spins. He's been in enough dangerous situations to feel the shift. What he sees behind him is not a 5-story tower demon king with no privileges and a tiny mountain fortress. What he sees is black dragon scales emerging from a human frame, unfurling into something that fills the room's upper dimensions in a way the architecture shouldn't be able to accommodate. The geometry of it is wrong in the specific way that ancient bloodlines are wrong. They don't fit neatly into normal space. The spirit bomb charges in Burj's hands. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense. It's more like a concentrated argument about what happens when dragon lineage and accumulated spirit energy from Erna's 4th floor ecosystem get focused into a single point. Hillen calculates fast. He's a 10-star. He's fought things that would end lesser heroes. He looks at the charging blast and runs the math on whether his depleted reserves, half filled by Grenada's stolen life force, are enough. They're not. The math is clear, and it is very bad. He tries to talk. 10 stars are good at talking. There's always an angle, always a negotiation, always a framing where the Demon King benefits more from a living, cooperative hero than from settling a grudge. Burj lets him finish the sentence. Then he fires. The blast hits Hillen square and drives him through the spirit garden, through the cultivated mana flowers, into the far wall of the 4th floor. The shockwave extinguishes the ambient spirit light in the room for 3 full seconds. When it comes back on, Hillen Cargill, one of the continent's elite 10 stars, celebrated hero of 100 cleared dungeons, man who made his name farming demon kings for experience, is a charred outline on the stone floor, alive. Burj is precise about that. Dead is wasteful, but done. Completely, utterly done. Burj walks to Grenada, pulls the spirit flowers from the garden, Erna's carefully cultivated blooms, the ones she's been growing for exactly this kind of moment, and applies them directly. Healing mana floods back in. The dimming reverses. Grenada breathes. He doesn't speak. Neither does Burj. Some things don't need framing. Hillen wakes up in the dungeon. Stone walls. Chains designed for something much stronger than a regular prisoner. Because Burj has thought through the obvious escape vectors for a 10-star even at depleted capacity. The light is minimal and functional. Gordon is there when he opens his eyes, ledger in hand, with the expression of a man who has fully committed to the administrative side of something extremely morally complicated. Burj arrives shortly after. The conversation that follows is structured like a negotiation, but operates like a dissection. Burj lays out the situation with complete calm. The expedition failure has been noted by every guild, every merchant consortium, and every adventuring league that funded it. 500 warriors and a 10-star hero went into a small mountain territory and did not come back. The financial backing for that expedition came from 14 separate investment sources. Those sources need repayment. Hillen's reputation, which is the primary asset that gets a 10-star hero access to unlimited expedition funding, is now functionally gone. Nobody invests in a team that disappears. The rumor network in the human hero system runs fast, and it runs merciless. By the time Hillen walks back into any guild hall, the debt notices will already be waiting. The debt figure Burj quotes is not a number Hillen can pay. Not in any realistic time frame. Not through any conventional means. Burj slides the Armanis orb across the floor. It looks small, unimpressive. A dark, slightly warm sphere about the size of a large grape, with a faint internal pulse that suggests something alive in there waiting. Burj explains the mechanics. The Armanis orb fuses with the brain during a survival adaptation phase. If the subject makes it through adaptation, which is painful, he mentions this without drama, the master gains full tracking capability on their location and a direct line ability to detonate the subject's brain upon detecting hostility. No hostility, no detonation. Simple relationship. Hillen asks what the alternative is. Burj says there isn't one presented at this time. The orb goes down, the adaptation is as bad as advertised. Hillen spends 2 days in the cell doing nothing but existing through the process, which is apparently the most accurate description of what adaptation feels like. When it settles, Burj can feel the new connection. A thread of awareness, steady and clear, pointing at a dungeon cell 2 floors below. Hillen Cargill, one of the continent's elite 10 stars. Operating, effective immediately, as Burj Adeas' deep cover intelligence asset in every human guild, every hero coalition, every merchant consortium he can access. The man who laughed at a demon king's severed head in another lifetime is now a vassal with a brain that detonates on command. Gordon documents this with specific care. He writes the entry 3 times because the first 2 versions feel too casual for what they are. The summit interaction with Jason has left one loose thread. Jason didn't accept the deflection completely. He filed it away, which is more dangerous. The Demon King of Lies sitting on a piece of unresolved information about Burj is a long-term vulnerability. Burj manages it the way he manages most vulnerabilities, by creating something more interesting for Jason to look at. Through Hillen's newly activated intelligence network and Grenada's existing guild contacts, Burj begins feeding specific, accurate but selectively curated information into the channels Jason monitors. Nothing fabricated, fabrications get caught, and Jason is very good at catching them. Just real information presented in a frame that makes Burj look like a minor, erratic player who got lucky with a defensive trap and is now trying to consolidate a small territory. Not a threat, not a puzzle, just a weird outlier with one good day. Jason watches. He's not fully satisfied, but he's also not moving. The information cost of mounting an action against Burj doesn't currently outweigh the return. He keeps the file open and returns his attention to more pressing hierarchical business. Burj crosses Jason from urgent concern to ongoing management in his mental prioritization list. Then something else requires attention entirely. The Ormoth Forest sits at the edge of the volcanic zone south of the main continent range, a region where the Beast Kingdom and several human empires have been grinding against each other in a low-grade territorial war for the better part of 2 decades. The war is precisely the kind of multi-party stalemate that produces excellent distraction. Buried in the volcanic heart of Ormoth is something Burj has been planning around since the first week of his regression. The Phoenix. Not the symbol, not the concept. The actual entity, a mythical being of pure fire lineage, billions of years old, whose physical heart crystallizes over vast timescales into a concentrated nucleus of elemental flame power. A being at that tier doesn't die in the conventional sense. When its cycle ends, the heart remains, and whatever absorbs it carries that power forward. The Phoenix's cycle ended. The heart is sitting in a magma pool at the center of an active volcano in the middle of a war zone. Burj's dragon bloodline is the key. Black dragon scales are among the only biological materials that can survive direct magma exposure long enough to reach the heart. The scales don't conduct heat the same way standard materials do. They absorb and distribute rather than transmit. It still requires essentially no protective gear and complete submission to conditions that would kill almost anything else on the continent. He strips down, because anything he wears will not survive the descent, and dives. The magma is not a metaphor for anything. It's magma. It's several thousand degrees of liquidized rock pressing in from every direction. The sensation, Burj discovers, is a specific kind of agony that has no comparison point because nothing in normal biological experience prepares a body for it. The scales hold. His core body temperature spikes to the threshold of what the dragon bloodline can manage and stays there, trembling at the edge. He goes deeper. The Phoenix heart is exactly where his calculations said it would be, resting in a natural hollow at the volcanic base, pulsing with a slow warmth that is completely different from the surrounding magma. The magma burns, the heart radiates, he absorbs it. What happens next is not controlled. The Phoenix element does not integrate quietly. It explodes through every cell in Burj's body simultaneously, rewriting chemistry and energy pathways and physical structure faster than any deliberate training program ever could. His hair, black since birth, goes red at the roots and keeps going. A fiery internal pressure builds behind his sternum that has nothing to do with his dragon nature and everything to do with something much older now sharing his biology. He makes it back to the surface, barely. The wings come out on the way up, and they are not his wings. They're the phoenix's, enormous, burning, and operating on an instinct that isn't Burj's own yet. They catch the updraft from the volcano and fire him skyward at a velocity that removes any pretense of a controlled exit. He goes across the sky like a flare, trailing fire, leaving a visual signature visible from 3 kingdoms. The war below pauses. Both sides look up. Burj is thinking several things very fast, the primary one being that he needs to get back to the tower before anyone identifies the trajectory. The wings are not responding to direct instruction. They're running on phoenix reflexes that haven't been calibrated to a dragon host yet. He negotiates with his own biology for approximately 40 minutes of chaotic aerial transit before something like compromise is reached, and he comes down in the mountain valley at a speed that leaves a crater. Gordon, who was managing tower operations and doing paperwork, hears the impact. He comes outside. He looks at the crater. He looks at the red-haired, smoldering, visually transformed Demon King pulling himself out of it. He goes back inside and writes in the ledger for a very long time. The Phoenix integration takes several days to settle. Burj spends them in the throne room running calibration exercises, getting the fire element to recognize the dragon bloodline as host rather than opponent, establishing interior communication between 2 very old and very different sources of power that are now permanently sharing one body. It's productive and deeply uncomfortable. On the 3rd day, he goes for a flight to test range and control, and runs directly into Princess Qaida. Qaida is the 9th princess of the 9th Empire, which puts her exactly far enough down the royal succession to be given a hero commission rather than political duties. She's young, she's trained hard, and she carries the Crescent Moon technique, an anti-demon aura ability that her order has spent generations refining specifically to counter demonic energy signatures. She's in the Aryan region because she followed a rumor about a small Demon King territory, and small Demon King territories are exactly the caliber of commission that a novice hero takes to build their record. She sees Burj. She sees the red hair and the residual phoenix heat and the black scales and makes a fast assessment that this is exactly the kind of target she's been looking for. She unleashes the Crescent Moon Strike. It's a genuine technique. Years of daily cultivation distilled into one concentrated energy wave, shaped and sharpened specifically to cut through demonic resistance. Against a standard demon, it would be decisive. Burj watches it come. He extends one hand. The crescent moon wave hits his palm and he closes his fingers around it and it stops. The energy presses against his grip for a moment, and then the phoenix heat in his palm dissolves it. He squeezes gently and the technique collapses. Qaida stares at her hands, at him, back at her hands. The thing about anti-demon techniques is that they're designed for demons. They're not designed for whatever Burj is right now. A black dragon bloodline with a phoenix soul integrated into the biology and 15 years of tactical regression running the whole apparatus. He takes her to the tower. 4th floor, the recovery area near Erna's spirit garden. He's not cruel about it. She's a novice. She made a reasonable tactical choice with the information she had, and breaking every bone in her body to make a point would be wasteful. He tells her to rest and train and consider what she's learned. Erna brings her spirit cookies within the hour. This is how Erna processes most situations on the 4th floor, through baked goods and an instinct toward domestic normalcy that makes the tower feel, at moments, aggressively unlike any dungeon in recorded demon history. Qaida eats the cookie. She is confused about many things. There's one final piece of the tower's foundation that Erna has been working toward since her first week in the spirit garden. Spirit summoning at the high-rank tier is not a quick process. High-rank spirits are ancient, independent entities with their own preferences and personalities. They don't come when called unless the environment, the summoner's attunement, and the specific ritual materials all align at a level that takes most spirit mages years to prepare. Erna has been preparing for months. The catalyst is spirit powder, a refined material created through a process that most alchemists can't replicate, developed originally by a historical figure named Senal whose methods were lost to most practitioners. Burj obtained genuine high-quality Senal powder through his merchant network, the kind of acquisition that costs a significant portion of his gold reserve and is worth every coin. Erna receives the powder with the focus of someone who has been mentally rehearsing this moment since the day she realized the Mountain Valley's mana concentration was extraordinary. The summoning takes 3 hours. The tower's mana field fluctuates during the process. Even Loger notices it on the first floor, pausing mid-calibration to look at the ceiling with professional concern. The orc sentries in the valley feel something shift in the mountain air. Gordon grips his ledger with both hands. Then the water manifests. Neruniel arrives as a column of living water that resolves, gradually, into a figure with the specific presence of something that has existed for a very long time and is accustomed to being treated accordingly. A high-rank water spirit. The kind of entity that lesser spirits defer to, that humans build shrines for, that appears in texts about the absolute upper tier of elemental manifestation. She looks around the 4th floor. She takes in the spirit garden, the baked goods cooling on a rack near the window, the carefully cultivated mana environment. She looks at Erna, she looks at the tower, she looks at Burj. Her expression shifts immediately from ancient dignity to something considerably less formal. She announces, with complete conviction, that she has read extensively about situations exactly like this one. The forbidden romance between a spirit and a demon king. The tension. The circumstances that bring two very different beings together in an isolated fortress. She has opinions about how this story should develop. Burj stares at her. Erna, who has been maintaining a careful emotional distance from her own feelings about the Demon King for months, stares at her with a slightly different quality of staring. Neruniel demands to know when the romantic excursion is scheduled. Burj tells her they're about to face a defensive engagement against a coordinated hero coalition of nearly 5,000 warriors, and the scheduling of excursions is, at this moment, not the priority. Neruniel says she can multitask. Gordon in the doorway adds this interaction to the ledger. He has given up assigning it a category and simply writes it down under a section he has labeled 4th floor occurrences. The tower is invisible, armed to the teeth, and staffed with a water spirit demanding a dinner date. Burj looks at the resources available to him and starts thinking about money. Not demon energy, that's a separate economy. Human gold. The kind of capital that moves through merchant guilds and trade consortiums and investment networks, that lubricates the hero system from the inside, that funds the expeditions and equips the parties and pays the informants that keep the human hunting machine operational. Burj wants inside that machine, not to destroy it from the outside. To own pieces of it quietly, the way a chess player owns squares rather than pieces. The city of Amer is the place to start. The Magitech capital, a sprawling urban center built around the intersection of magical engineering and commercial trade, where the line between an enchanted item and a manufactured product blurs into a thriving industry. Merchant guilds here operate with the kind of organized complexity that makes the demonic court look like a village council. Burj arrives in a clean suit, no visible scales, moving through the commercial district with the unhurried pace of someone who has done this before and knows exactly which door he's walking through. His target is a merchant named Pell. Pell runs a specialty trade in rare alchemical components. He's good at it in the specific way that con artists are good at their jobs. He knows what people want, he knows how to present it, and he knows that the gap between a thing's actual value and a motivated buyer's perceived value is where real money lives. He's been overcharging clients for years on rare powder grades, selling grade 2 materials at grade 1 prices to anyone who comes in without an expert to verify. Burj comes in without an expert to verify. Pell does his assessment. This is a demon, clearly, though a well-dressed one, no visible power signature that's immediately alarming, and adjusts the pricing accordingly upward. The pitch is practiced. The numbers are confidently wrong. Burj listens to the entire pitch. Then he makes a counteroffer. Not a lower price. A business arrangement. The Golden Moon Merchants Guild, a legitimate consortium with significant purchasing power in the alchemical supply chain, is currently looking for a reliable exclusive supplier for certain high-demand components. The contract value is substantial. The terms are generous. The catch is that the guild requires verification of consistent supply quality and a reference from an existing partner. Pell sees the numbers, and his eyes light up in the specific way that marks a man who is about to make a bad decision. Burj mentions, almost as an aside, that Princess Louise Worth of the Dwarf Kingdom has been actively pursuing leads on suppliers who've been misrepresenting material grades to demon buyers. Louise, he notes conversationally, is currently operating in this region. Personally, she's the kind of enforcer who prefers direct resolution to legal process. The name lands. Louise Worth's reputation in commercial circles is not subtle. The dwarf princess who dismantles tunnel networks with her bare hands and has been in a documented rage spiral since someone robbed her vault does not approach fraud investigations diplomatically. Pell's enthusiasm recalibrates rapidly. The contract he signs gives Burj's front company exclusive purchasing rights on specific component categories at fixed, honest prices. Pell's cut is a modest management fee, enough to stay motivated, not enough to feel like a partnership. The guild relationship is real, arranged through Grenada's network, and will generate legitimate commercial returns that Burj can fold back into operational funding. Pell signs everything. He is polite and efficient and does not make eye contact for the last 10 minutes of the meeting. Burj walks out with a functioning front company, a supply contract, and the quiet satisfaction of watching a con artist get out-conned by someone who wasn't even trying to be subtle about it. The Beast Kingdom situation has been simmering since the Draxton meeting. Burj took the intelligence Draxton accidentally provided and spent several weeks tracing its implications through Grenada's network and Hillen's newly active vassal channels. What emerged was a detailed map of a political situation ripe for exploitation. Draxton's Beast Kingdom is in a territorial dispute with 3 human empires simultaneously, a multi-front pressure that's been grinding for years without resolution because none of the parties has the decisive advantage needed to end it, and none of them can afford to back down without conceding strategic ground. It's the kind of stalemate that lasts until something external tips the balance. Burj tips the balance. Not through direct military involvement, he's nowhere near ready for that kind of exposure. Through information. Specifically, through feeding Draxton's rivals exactly the right details about Beast Kingdom resource allocation and deployment patterns. Accurate information drawn from Hillen's network, at exactly the moments when those details would cause the most strategic disruption. The human empires suddenly make better decisions. They plug gaps that have been exploitable for years. They reinforce positions that Draxton's long-term strategy depended on weakening. Draxton finds himself fighting harder on 3 fronts with no obvious explanation for why his strategic picture has deteriorated. He's not stupid, he knows something external has changed, but he can't identify the source, and that uncertainty is almost worse than the military pressure. What Burj specifically needs from this isn't Draxton's defeat. He needs Draxton fully occupied, because somewhere in the Beast Kingdom's volcanic territories, during the exact period when Louise and Draxton's forces are simultaneously distracted by the multi-front war, Burj made his move on the Phoenix. The timing wasn't accidental. The volcanic zone in Ormoth was contested territory during the war. Both Louise's mercenary forces and Draxton's army had units operating there, creating a chaotic overlap that provided exceptional cover for a naked demon king diving into magma. In the confusion of active military engagement, one anomalous heat signature from a volcanic complex drew precisely nobody's focused attention. Burj planned the Phoenix extraction to happen during the loudest possible moment in the regional conflict. The war he aggravated served, among other functions, as the cover for the most important power acquisition of his regression. Draxton is still fighting. Louise is still hunting. Neither of them knows what they actually protected while they were busy. Back in the tower, the operational picture is changing fast. Hillen's vassal network is reporting information at a volume that requires Gordon to hire, through Grenada's contacts, 2 additional administrative assistants who believe they're working for a human trading company and have no idea their employer is a demon king in a hidden mountain fortress. They process intelligence reports in a rented office in Amer, while Gordon coordinates from the tower, and the actual source of everything they're filing is a chained 10-star spy. Gordon has thoughts about this arrangement. He writes them in a private section of the ledger that he has marked ethical complications, ongoing, and then continues doing the work. The intelligence product is extraordinary. Burj can see the human hero ecosystem from the inside now. The funding structures, the coalition-building processes, the political relationships between guild masters and noble houses. He can see which demon kings are being actively targeted, and what the hero community thinks of his own territory. What the hero community thinks of his territory is that it's a death trap and nobody should go near it. The canonical story that circulated after Hillen's expedition came back zero is that the Aryan mountain range contains a concealed demon fortification of unknown configuration that eliminated 500 experienced warriors through unidentified means. No survivors with direct combat contact. No intelligence on the tower's actual defenses. No body count on the demon side. Unknown configuration is the part that's doing the work. Known dangers can be planned around. Unknown dangers produce caution and avoidance in the risk calculation frameworks that guilds use to approve expedition funding. The Aryan territory has gone from minor outlier to actively avoided in the span of one failed expedition report. This is exactly what Burj wanted, and it creates exactly the problem he anticipated. Eventually, the accumulated mystery produces a different kind of response. Not avoidance. Organization. The number comes through Hillen's network on a Tuesday. 4,728 heroes. Organized under a joint coalition of 7 major guilds, 3 noble houses, and 2 independent military contractors. Funding approved. Leadership assigned. Departure scheduled. The trigger was not revenge for Hillen's expedition, though that's the narrative being used in the public communication. The trigger is the unknown configuration problem. 7 guilds looked at one failed expedition, ran the numbers on projected demon territory expansion if the Aryan outlier is left unaddressed, and concluded that the cost of a massive overwhelming force is lower than the long-term cost of letting something unknown consolidate in their northern mountain range. They're not wrong about the math. Nearly 5,000 heroes is not a defensive proposition, it's an erasure operation. The logic is straightforward. If the defenses are unknown, bring enough force that the defenses become irrelevant. Gordon reads the intelligence report twice. He sets it down. He picks up his ledger. He doesn't write anything for a while. Burj reads it once and starts running numbers. The Hellforge was built for Hillen's expedition. 500 warriors was the design parameter Logar optimized against. 47 cannons at maximum saturation coverage handles that load with margin. Against nearly 5,000, the math is different. The first-floor artillery will cause catastrophic attrition, but it cannot eliminate that number before the ammunition cycles require reload gaps. And a hero coalition that size has the tactical sophistication to recognize a reload gap and exploit it. He needs layers. The Hellforge is layer 1. He needs 2, 3, 4 more. He calls Logar. Logar, who has been in an ongoing creative dialogue with the tower's first-floor architecture for months and has opinions about several upgrades he's wanted to implement, arrives at the conversation already thinking about solutions. Burj gives him the number, 4,728. Logar looks at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he asks for a list of materials and a timeline. The timeline Burj gives him is aggressive. Logar says it's possible if everyone in the tower helps with logistics. Erna's spirit entities can move materials, Krutu's orcs can handle heavy transport. Gordon can coordinate supply chains through the front company in Amer. The tower enters a construction phase that feels like controlled emergency. Logar works through the nights. This is not unusual, he's always worked through nights, but the scale of what he's building now is categorically different from the original installation. Secondary trap networks on the upper floors. Reinforced trigger systems on the valley approaches. Integration points where Erna's spirit entities can amplify blast radii. The water spirit Neruniel, who arrived expecting to spend her first weeks getting acquainted with her new environment at a dignified pace, finds herself deployed as a utility asset managing coolant flow for Logar's extended forge operations. She expresses opinions about this, at length, with significant creative vocabulary. Logar, who has been dealing with difficult clients his entire professional life, tells her that the coolant flow is a precision requirement, and her opinions are welcome once the calibration is complete. They develop a working relationship that is primarily argument but functionally effective. Erna finds Burj in the throne room 2 days before the coalition's projected arrival. She brings spirit cookies, the kind with the crystallized mana blooms on top that she started making after she figured out that the mana in Burj's immediate area responds slightly differently to her elemental attunement than it does elsewhere in the tower. She's never mentioned this observation directly. She sets the plate down and sits across from him. She's been watching his face for months now. The controlled expression, the precise calculations, the absolute refusal to let anyone in the tower see anything that looks like uncertainty. She knows what his face looks like when the numbers are adding up, and what it looks like when they're not. Right now they're close, but close isn't certain. She tells him that Neruniel's full capabilities haven't been tested yet. High-rank water spirits have battle applications that most summoners never explore, because the primary relationship paradigm for water spirits is protective and restorative rather than offensive. But at Naruniel's tier, the distinction between restoration and destruction is largely a matter of application pressure. Burj looks at her. She's offering him a tactical asset she didn't need to flag. She also tells him that the fourth floor's spirit ecosystem has been quietly generating a secondary mana reservoir for the past several months, a natural product of the blooms growing in a concentrated area. She's been holding it, building the density. It's available if he needs it. Burj looks at the plate of spirit cookies, and then at Erna, and thinks about the specific calculation error that most demon kings make about their captive princesses. They count them as a resource, a power source, a political chip. Erna is running independent strategic analysis and bringing him assets he didn't ask for because she's decided the tower's survival is something she has a stake in. He eats one of the cookies. He tells her the mana reservoir is extremely useful and she should keep building it. She blushes approximately the same color as the crystallized mana blooms and goes back to her garden. Gordon witnesses this exchange from the doorway and adds a brief note to the fourth floor occurrences section. He is not a man who edits his documentation, but he considers it this once. Kaida has been on the fourth floor for 3 weeks. She spends her first week being confused, second week being angry. The specific anger of someone who has realized that the confusion is not going to resolve itself quickly. Third week quietly training in the section of the spirit garden Erna cleared for her, running through her technique forms at half power, trying to understand what happened when Burj caught her crescent moon strike. She cannot understand it technically. She knows the theory of the technique completely. She has practiced it thousands of times. It should not be catchable by a bare hand. The energy density is too high and the anti-demon resonance is specifically calibrated to make demon-side resistance structurally impossible. He caught it anyway and dissolved it in his palm. She starts asking Erna questions. Not about Burj directly, about the tower, about what this place is, about how a demon king in a 5-story hidden fortress with no traditional army ends up with a high-rank water spirit and a former 10-star hero in the dungeon and an elf master chef who goes on what appear to be business trips. Erna answers the questions she can answer and makes spirit cookies for the ones she can't. Kaida is not being converted, exactly, but she is being complicated. The simple framework she arrived with, demon territory, clear it, file the report, has encountered too much contradictory information to hold its original shape. When Burj comes to tell her that a very large coalition is about to attempt to clear the territory, he expects either fear or strategic interest. She asks what she can do. He tells her the fourth floor has the best structural protection in the tower and she should stay there. He says it without condescension. It's a tactical fact, not a dismissal. She asks again, not where to stay, what she can do. Burj considers her for a moment. He tells her that if any hero element reaches the fourth floor, the resident defenders will need every viable combat unit. Her crescent moon technique won't work on him, but it will work fine on standard human combatants who don't have dragon bloodline absorption. She nods, files the information, starts running the technique forms at full power. Erna watches this from across the garden and adds a very small spirit bloom to the windowsill near Kaida's training space. It's a good luck gesture in elemental tradition. Kaida doesn't know this. She trains next to it anyway. Krutu's orcs receive their deployment instructions 48 hours before the coalition arrives. The transformation that Burj's demonic marking gave them has compounded over months of actual combat experience. The initial strength surge was the foundation, but orcs who've been fighting hero parties in blizzard conditions through an entire Aryan winter are something different from even the enhanced versions they became at the marking ceremony. They move in the snow like they're native to it. They know the mountain geography the way experienced soldiers know a city. Every alley, every choke point, every place where a group of unfamiliar fighters will instinctively cluster and become a target. The coalition of nearly 5,000 is large. It is also operating in terrain it has never mapped, following approach vectors it doesn't know are pre-channeled, carrying supplies calibrated for an operation that planners estimated at 3 days. The pre-approach disruption begins 72 hours before the coalition expects contact. Not avalanches this time. Burj used that tool on Hillen's group, and good tacticians in the coalition leadership will have studied that report. This time it's precision. Single supply runners intercepted and misdirected. Communication relay points between forward scouts subtly shifted overnight, creating 2-hour gaps in the information flow. Nothing dramatic enough to suggest coordinated opposition. Just the natural friction of a mountain campaign in bad weather, amplified by orc teams that hit single targets and vanish before anyone can establish contact. The coalition arrives at the Mountain Valley's approach corridor 4,611 strong, 117 already detached, lost, delayed, or dealing with supply issues. They see a valley, they see snow, they see nothing that looks like a tower. The field commander, a veteran guild leader named Soran who has cleared enough territories to know that absence of visible fortification is not absence of fortification, calls a halt and starts a systematic magical scan. The mana ghost holds. He scans twice, 3 times. His mage unit runs every detection protocol in their collective training. The valley is empty. Soren doesn't trust empty. But he also can't command a 4,000-person coalition to not advance because the empty valley feels wrong. He orders a careful forward movement in formation. The orcs hit the flanks the moment the formation moves. Inside the invisible tower, Gordon stands at the monitoring point and counts. He has developed a specific count methodology over the past month, tracking the coalition's approach by Hillen's network reports, triangulating with Krutu's orc messenger system, cross-referencing with Neruniel's water sensibility to detect the vibration of large groups moving on wet snow. The result is a running number that updates in near real time. He reports to Burj every 20 minutes. Burj sits in the throne room and does not look worried. He looks like a man running a calculation he has already run several hundred times, who is waiting to see if the result matches the projection. Erna brings him a cookie. She stays, he lets her. Loger is on the first floor, because the Hellforge is his and he wants to be present when it fires. This is irrational from a personal safety standpoint and completely understandable from a craftsman's standpoint. He built the cannons. He wants to hear them work at full capacity. Neruniel has positioned herself on the 3rd floor, which she has identified as the optimal point for hydraulic pressure deployment, a technique she described to Burj in technical terms that essentially translate to, I can turn the air in a corridor into something that functions like a river at flood stage. She is taking the assignment seriously. She is also, between preparation sequences, reading what appears to be a romance novel she acquired from Erna's collection. When Burj passes the 3rd floor on his way to the roof, she holds up the book and tells him she has found an excellent reference model for the dynamic between a powerful demon lord and an ancient spirit entity. He tells her to focus on the hydraulic pressure deployment. She tells him the two are not mutually exclusive. He goes to the roof of the invisible tower and looks out at a valley that currently contains approximately 4,300 heroes working their way through orc disruption tactics in deteriorating visibility conditions, trying to find a fortress that is standing directly in the center of their search grid. The phoenix warmth in his chest pulses once, steady and old. He watches the approach. He runs the numbers one more time. He lets himself feel, for exactly one breath, the full weight of what he's built since the day he set the sacred scroll down on that graduation podium and told the entire demonic academy exactly what he thought of their rules. A hidden tower nobody can find, a hellforge nobody can survive, an orc army that was supposed to be cannon fodder turned into a mountain battalion, a 10-star hero with a detonatable brain feeding him intelligence from inside the enemy coalition, a phoenix soul in his chest and dragon scales on his back, and a water spirit with romantic literature opinions, managing flood pressure corridor defenses. All of it built from exile, from 0 privileges, from a death sentence with extra steps. The first orc signal fires, a deep horn note that echoes off the valley walls, barely audible over the wind to anyone who doesn't know what it means. It means the coalition's forward element has reached the kill zone. Burj exhales the one breath, puts the weight back, turns toward the stairs. The front door is about to open. The front door opens at 0400. Not because the coalition planned to breach at that hour, because the hero element that reaches the door, a forward strike unit of 63 fighters who got separated from the main formation in the orc disruption, makes the individual decision to try the entrance while the bulk of their force is still 300 meters back in the valley, reorganizing after a flanking strike that hit them from 3 sides simultaneously. 63 is not the design number. Loger built the Hellforge for maximum saturation. The difference between 63 and 500 in terms of first floor outcome is largely academic. The door swings open. The strike unit enters in combat formation. Shields forward, mages behind, healers at the rear. Experienced, disciplined, moving the way professionals move when they've cleared dozens of dungeons and they know the entry moment is the highest risk point and they've trained for it specifically. They see an empty room, stone walls, high ceiling, no monsters, no traps visible, no treasure, no obvious defensive infrastructure anywhere. The unit commander is a woman named Vela, 34 years, 12 years of field experience. She's read the report on Hillen's expedition. She knows that the Aryan territory eliminated 500 heroes through unidentified means. She is not relaxed about the empty room. She signals her unit to hold position at the entrance. She looks at the walls. The walls look back at her. She signals her mage unit to run a localized scan. The mage casts. The scan propagates through the room and finds nothing. Clean stone. No enchantment signatures. No magical infrastructure. The scan is the highest sensitivity detection spell in the mage's known repertoire. It doesn't find the cannons because Loger built the concealment housings from a specific non-reactive stone composite that he sourced through Grenada's network after 3 weeks of testing. The housings read as structural architecture. They are structural architecture. The cannons are inside them. Vela debates with herself for 11 seconds. Gordon is counting from the monitoring point, and then signals her unit to advance. 27 fighters step past the threshold. Loger, in the operator position he built for himself in a reinforced alcove at the back of the first floor, watches the weight-triggered sensors light up in sequence. He gives them 6 more steps, then he fires. The sound is the first thing. Outside the tower, outside the invisible tower, which means in open air in a mountain valley with excellent acoustics, the Hell Forge at full saturation produces a sound that the Coalition's main formation, 300 meters back, registers as a single massive detonation. Not a sequence, one sound, because the 47 cannons are calibrated to fire in a cascade that completes in 0.3 seconds, which the human auditory system cannot distinguish from simultaneous. The echo off the valley walls doubles it, then trebles it. Soren, commanding the main formation from an elevated position 300 meters back, hears the sound and makes the correct tactical assessment in under 2 seconds. The forward strike unit has triggered a trap. He does not know what kind. He knows the sound of 47 simultaneous explosions in an enclosed space, and he knows that 63 fighters went through that door. He calls an immediate halt on the advance. He also does something smart. He sends a runner to the rear of the formation to get the heavy support mage unit, a 16-person specialist team equipped for structural demolition and barrier breaking. If the trap is mechanical, it needs to be identified and disabled before the main force advances. If it's magical, the heavy support can counter it. The runner moves fast. The heavy support unit is 200 meters back. It takes 11 minutes for them to reach Soran's position. Those 11 minutes are important. Inside the tower, Loger runs a rapid post-fire assessment. The automated reload cycle begins immediately. This is one of his most important engineering achievements on the second installation pass. The original Hellforge required manual reload between salvos, which created the gap vulnerability that Burj identified against a large enough force. The upgraded system uses a continuous feed mechanism that reduces the gap to 40 seconds instead of 4 minutes. 40 seconds is still a gap. He reports the number to Gordon through the tower's internal relay system, a rope and bell network that sounds archaic but functions with precision because Gordon designed the protocols and Loger built the mechanisms. Gordon relays to Burj. Burj is already moving. The 40-second reload window is not something he leaves undefended. He designed a specific protocol for it. During reload, the second floor activates. The second floor is not the Hellforge. The second floor is something Loger built when Burj gave him the problem of what stops a hero formation that survives the first floor and advances in the 40-second window. What Loger built for the second floor is considerably more intimate than artillery. Rotating blade mechanisms set flush with the floor, walls, and ceiling, triggered by motion rather than weight, calibrated to multiple height ranges simultaneously. The kind of trap architecture that doesn't need to kill, it needs to deny advance. A hero who can't move forward without losing a limb makes different decisions than a hero who is being shot at from a distance. The second floor is 3 meters of corridor that currently contains enough rotating steel to make the 40-second window survivable for the Hellforge and unsurvivable for anything trying to use it. The Coalition's heavy support mage team arrives at Soren's position. They run a long-range scan on the tower entrance from 300 meters back. They still can't find the tower. This is the moment that functionally breaks the Coalition's tactical cohesion. Not the sound of the detonation. Experienced heroes normalize large explosion sounds. They're a feature of high-level dungeon engagement. What breaks cohesion is the information gap. The scan should have found the enemy fortification. It found nothing. The forward strike unit is not responding to signals. The valley is quiet except for wind and the distant sound of orcs harassing the formation's flanks. Soren orders a communication crystal activation, the high-priority channel that goes directly to guild leadership back in the city, reserved for situations requiring strategic decisions above field commander authority. He reports, "Contact made. Significant casualties in forward unit. Fortification location unverified. Requesting guidance." Guild leadership takes 40 minutes to respond because the senior committee has to be assembled. Those 40 minutes are also important. Neruniel feels the vibration before Burj tells her it's time. Her water sense extends through the moisture in the mountain air, in the snowpack, in the breath of 4,000 heroes standing in a valley below her position. She can feel their heartbeats as variations in atmospheric humidity. She can feel the specific pattern of a large group under stress, elevated respiration, increased body heat output, the subtle change in collective water chemistry that happens when thousands of living bodies simultaneously experience fear. She sets down the romance novel. She extends both hands and begins to draw the moisture from the valley air toward a concentration point in the third floor's structural center. This is the technique she described to Burj: hydraulic pressure deployment at scale. Water at the volumes and velocities she can produce ceases to function like water and starts to function like a geological event. She's not summoning rain. She's summoning the kinetic equivalent of a river hitting a wall, directed through corridor geometries that she and Loger spent 3 days mapping for optimal flow dynamics. The third floor has 4 corridor access points. She fills all 4 simultaneously. From outside, if anyone were watching, which nobody is because the tower is invisible, it would look like the valley air developing localized horizontal weather. Fast-moving columns of condensed moisture appearing from nowhere and disappearing into nothing at specific points along what appears to be empty terrain. From inside the third floor, for any hero element that survives the first 2 floors and reaches the third, it looks like a hallway that has spontaneously become a river. Erna activates the mana reservoir on Burj's signal. She's been building it for months, the concentrated product of a high mana environment continuously cultivated by a first-rank elemental prodigy. The density she's achieved is beyond what any standard spirit garden would produce. It's closer to a mana crystal formation than ambient field energy, except it's distributed through the 4th floor's entire spirit ecosystem rather than concentrated in a single point. When she releases it into the tower's structural field, every enchantment and mechanism in the building gets a direct power injection. Loger's reload cycle accelerates by 11 seconds. Neruniel's hydraulic pressure output increases by a factor she was not expecting and responds to with visible surprise and reassessment of her flow calculations. The tower, already formidable, becomes something a tier sharper. Erna sits in the center of her spirit garden in the specific lotus position she uses for sustained energy management and maintains the output with the calm focus of someone who has been practicing this exact discipline since she was 8 years old. The spirit entities around her, the ones she's cultivated for months, the minor elementals and mid-rank spirits that form the 4th floor's ecosystem, orient toward her and begin contributing their own energy to the field. It becomes communal, the whole 4th floor breathing together in support of the tower's defense. Kaida, training in her corner of the garden, feels the energy shift and looks at Erna. Erna's eyes are closed, her hands are open. The spirit bloom Erna placed on Kaida's windowsill 3 weeks ago is glowing. Kaida goes back to her training forms. She runs them at full power. She is not thinking about her original commission, or her guild report, or the political implications of a novice hero assisting a demon king's defensive engagement. She is thinking about her technique and the fact that she is going to be ready when the door opens. Soren receives guidance from guild leadership at the 50-minute mark. The guidance is, advance. Full formation. The sunk cost of the expedition funding does not allow for retreat without confirmed engagement and casualty assessment. The forward strike unit's fate needs to be determined. The fortification needs to be identified. He doesn't like it. He is a professional, and professionals execute orders from command structure, even when the orders are the product of financial anxiety rather than tactical logic. He advances. Full formation minus the forward unit, minus the flanks that the orcs have been cutting at since the approach began. He is now moving approximately 4,100 effective fighters toward a location where 63 specialists triggered an unknown defensive system and have not been heard from since. He has the heavy support mages at the front. He has his best barrier specialists immediately behind. He has learned nothing about what's inside that valley except that it is dangerous in ways his detection grid cannot identify. He advances anyway. The orcs let the main formation through. This is Burj's instruction. Let them reach the door. The orc function was disruption on approach, not containment. You don't try to hold 4,000 heroes in an open valley with an orc battalion. You make them tired, reduce their numbers, break their information picture, and deliver them to the kill zone. Krutu's forces fall back to elevated positions and watch. The main formation reaches the tower entrance. The formation commander identifies the door. Visible, physical, standing in apparently empty air because the mana ghost suppresses the structure, but not specific access points that Burj left unsealed for this purpose, and halts. Soren looks at a door standing in a snow-covered valley with nothing around it. He stands in front of this door for a full 90 seconds. Then he opens it. What happens next operates in waves. The first wave is the Hellforge, freshly reloaded, firing into the largest target volume it has ever engaged. Loger has recalibrated the spread pattern for maximum formation saturation, not the concentrated killbox geometry he used for 63 fighters, but a dispersal pattern that prioritizes coverage over concentration depth. More area, slightly less per point intensity, because the target is a formation that will instinctively compress at the entrance and then try to spread. The formation compresses at the entrance. The Hellforge fires into the compression. The barrier specialists at the front get their shields up fast enough to reduce personal casualties significantly. This is the difference between experienced heroes and raw recruits. A barrier specialist who survives the first salvo is a barrier specialist who can make the second salvo harder to aim. Soren's heaviest assets are professionals, and they respond professionally. Several of them make it through. The second wave is the second floor, which they reach through the reload window on adrenaline and barrier magic and the specific stubbornness of people who've already lost friends in this building and have converted grief into forward momentum. The rotating steel receives them. The second floor does what the second floor was designed to do. It is not clean or quick, and it costs the coalition another significant block of its advancing element. But hero parties at this level have healers, and healers buy time, and some of them make it through. The third floor is where Neruniel ends the advance. She waits until the corridor is full. Full, not partially occupied, because the hydraulic pressure technique requires a contained space to achieve maximum effect. And then she opens the channels. The water that hits the third floor corridor is not describable as water in the way that a river is describable as water. It is water the way a geological event is geological, beyond the scale at which normal physical categories apply. The pressure is total. The directionality is absolute. There is no fighting upstream against it, no barrier magic rated for the combined force of what an ancient high-rank water spirit can produce when she is focused, fully powered by Erna's mana reservoir, and taking the assignment seriously. The third floor corridor evacuates its occupants in approximately 4 seconds. Backward, fast, through the second floor, through the first floor, out the door, into the valley. Soren watches approximately 200 fighters arrive at his position from inside the fortress at very high speed and in extremely poor condition. He processes this. He sends the retreat signal. It takes 40 minutes for the coalition to fully disengage. The orcs harry the withdrawal but don't pursue beyond the valley corridor. Burj's instruction. You don't turn a tactical victory into a pursuit engagement that costs your best ground assets for marginal additional kills. Let them go. Let them carry the story. The story they carry matters more than the bodies. 4,728 heroes arrived at a mountain valley in the Aryan Range to eliminate a small, unorthodox Demon King territory. Fewer than 3,000 leave. None of them ever saw the tower. The defenders they encountered were a door, 3 floors of death, and what survivors will describe as a wall of water that moved like a living thing. No Demon King. No obvious power signature. No visual confirmation of any entity. The fortress doesn't exist according to every magical scan they ran, and it killed a third of their coalition through mechanisms that their debriefing teams will spend months trying to classify. The guild leadership that authorized the operation receives Soren's report and goes very quiet. The report circulates through the Hero Consortium network, through the investment groups, through the noble houses that co-funded the expedition. The Aryan mountain range territory, the tiny 5-story fortress with no privileges and no conventional army, is not put on a target list for a follow-up operation. It is put on a different kind of list entirely. Burj stands at the roof of the invisible tower as the last coalition elements clear the valley mouth. The phoenix warmth in his chest is steady. The red in his hair has settled into something permanent, not the violent flare of the absorption emergence, but a deep saturated color that the dragon black of his scales frames naturally, like something that was always meant to be there. He's thinking about the first life, about the graduation hall and the sacred scroll and the heroes who laughed at his severed head, about the system that was never designed for demons to win, only to provide increasingly good farming content until someone came along strong enough to clear the final floor. He thinks about what he's built instead, an invisible fortress, a hellforge, an ancient water spirit with romantic opinions and devastating hydraulic pressure, a former 10-star hero with a detonatable brain embedded in the coalition that just retreated, a network of front companies and intelligence assets and deep cover operatives that reaches into every major guild and trading house on the continent. 5 floors, no traditional army, no orthodox protocols. The demonic court thinks he's an eccentric outlier who got lucky. Jason thinks he's a minor puzzle. Princess Louise thinks he's a thief who stole her blacksmith. Draxton thinks he's an irritant. The coalition of 7 guilds and 3 noble houses now thinks he's something they cannot identify or quantify or locate. And that combination is the most powerful position on the board. You cannot plan against what you cannot measure. You cannot target what you cannot find. He hears footsteps on the stairs below, light ones, the specific rhythm of someone who knows where every creak in the staircase is and moves around them from habit. Erna arrives on the roof with a plate of spirit cookies, and the kind of expression that says she has done something exhausting and is pretending it was effortless. He takes a cookie. He looks at the empty valley where 4,000 heroes used to be. She sits next to him on the roof edge and looks at the same valley. Neither of them says anything for a while. The mountain wind is cold and clean and smells like snow and the faint residual ozone of large magical discharges. Then she says she's already thinking about what to plant in the spirit garden in spring. The battle runoff has enriched the mana concentration in the valley floor. The blooms there could be extraordinary. He looks at her. She's looking at the valley with the focused, evaluative attention of a spirit mage reading mana density. Not at him. But the tips of her ears are a different color than they were a moment ago. He tells her to make the spring garden whatever she thinks it should be. She nods. Once. With the specific formality of someone receiving official authorization for something they were going to do regardless. Below them, Neruniel's voice rises through the staircase from the 3rd floor, announcing that the hydraulic deployment was extremely impressive and she expects this accomplishment to be recognized in some form of celebratory occasion that she has already begun planning and which will involve a romantic dimension that she considers non-negotiable. Loger's voice rises from the 1st floor requesting that everyone stop standing on the roof because the structural load distribution was calculated for functional use, not scenic contemplation. Gordon's bell relay system produces 3 measured tones, his standard signal for administrative update requiring attention, from the management room. Crew 2's messenger orc arrives at the base of the tower with a horn signal indicating the valley is clear and requesting further orders and also requesting confirmation that the orc battalion's performance merits the additional rations that Crew 2 pre-authorized before the engagement. Kaida, on the 4th floor, is still running technique forms. She won't stop until someone tells her to stop. Nobody has told her to stop. Burj looks at all of this. The invisible tower humming with life and argument and cultivation and craftsmanship and the specific chaotic warmth of a collection of completely mismatched people who are, somehow, working, and files it away in the part of his mind that isn't strategy. Then he goes back to strategy, because Hillen's network is already showing new activity. The Guild Consortium's retreat report is filtering through the hero community and producing reactions. Jason's monitoring channels have registered the engagement outcome and will be processing its implications. Louise Worth, who was moving toward the Aryan region for entirely different reasons, is now moving faster because her sources have flagged the coalition event. And somewhere out there, the heroes who laughed at his severed head in another lifetime are alive, active, and not yet aware that the Demon King they think is a historical footnote is currently eating spirit cookies on the roof of a fortress they cannot locate. The game is just getting started. He finishes the cookie, goes downstairs, gets back to work.